All right, so we haven't even talked about what we were going to talk about today.
No,
So we're going to get
Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon Dynamite. That's what this episode is about. Before we ramble into other things, it's about a strange little movie. I guess maybe I'm walking. I guess maybe I'm trying to get around it because I'm not particularly crazy about this. I've never seen or understood what the fascination is with it, or
Hmm.
why it became like a sleeper cult mega hit. But
I kind of have a theory about
people
that.
seem to love this thing, and I'm not really
Yeah,
sure why.
I'm one of those people. I love this movie. I think it's hilarious. It might be because the first time I ever saw it, I was actually in science class of freshman year of high school. We were like, it was like just like a day where we weren't doing anything. It was like towards the end of the year, so we were having like just like a movie day, and so like I had like a younger teacher, and she like brought in Napoleon Dynamite as like a joke, I guess, and we watched it, and I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. Um,
Well, everybody that I
and so
know
it's
has
been
told me that, like, has either told me like, I think it's stupid or I think it's hilarious. I haven't really
yeah.
found anybody that said it's okay.
Yeah, I think the theory. So my theory of why it became so popular and kind of like a cultural thing is that it was almost like our generation's Clerks. So like Clerks came out in the early '90s, and it was more of like comedy for like Gen X. That was when Gen X were like kind of like in their 20s, and like some of the younger Gen X might have been in their late teens, and so that was like kind of like their life, And I think Napoleon Dynamite was really kind of our generation, like millennials, like that was like our like high school experience was that. And I think that's why it kind of appeals to so many people in our generation because it's almost like our Clerks, Napoleon Dynamite. Maybe not as successful because obviously Kevin Smith kind of like launched Clerks into a whole the View Askew universe. So he's got so many movies now, and Clerks 2, Jay and Silent Bob, everything. Um, but definitely like similar, like where it's this kind of almost like artsy, low budget independent film that has like very dry comedy in it, and it's just like kind of like these weird, silly situations with these kind of like dorky characters that are like supposed to be like average, like they're not like good looking, they're not like very like sociable, they're just like these average like kids, basically.
Right, they're like a band of misfits in high school,
Yeah.
or as one of my good high school friends is now telling me that we should make a T-shirt of a ragtag group of rogues.
Yes. um but yeah, I mean there's it's just I don't know, it's got this charm to it that like it's just I don't know. For me, it's hilarious. Just the jokes where he's like, when he goes to feed his llama, his pet llama, and he's like, like it's just so he's so abrasive. Like I think that's and so aloof, like and so not the like norm
Does
of
he
like
open his eyes anytime he speaks?
no, he pretty much always has his eyes closed when he's talking, which, again, is just adding to like his character as like this like nerdy, like socially awkward kid.
Yeah, and I mean it also shows that he's not. It's also like helps you understand that he's not very confident.
No, not at all. But it's weird because he has this like weird confidence where like he'll like tell these stories like about like how he was like in Alaska,
Well, he'll make
like
things
at his
up,
house. Yeah, he would just make things up, but
or
like
like his girlfriend in Oklahoma or something like that. And it's like you'd never been to Oklahoma, probably.
but he like just says these like stories he makes up with such confidence, like the fact that he like he was shooting wolverines because they were trying to eat his cousins in Alaska, like with a
Right.
shotgun,
He's like
you know.
he's got a lot of conviction behind it, and I think that's like part of it is that sometimes yeah, it's really ridiculous and it's absurd, and
Mhm.
but like part of you is kind of like, well, I wonder if he might be telling the truth because
Yeah,
his family's very bizarre, and and like his grandma's just like crazy, so it's possible.
yeah,
I mean, she ends up getting hurt like doing like sand dune like racing or something.
Yeah, she's I think riding like a quad or something on the sand dunes and like
Yeah.
does this crazy ass jump and like freaking falls, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you have like Uncle Rico who's like living in like a van down
Down
by
by
the
the
river.
river.
No. And like is like stuck in the past, thinking like he's was a high school football star, and he's like stuck in the past with that. Like he
Yeah,
can't
he
get over
has
the
like
fact.
he has like an Al Bundy complex.
Yeah, yeah, very much. Except like even like worse because he doesn't even have a family, or like I'm pretty sure his wife left him and stuff, and he's just sitting in like a van,
Yeah,
like in the middle of nowhere.
he still wears a ring too. So like
Yeah,
that's like a thing that I noticed is like he never talks about a wife or anything. So like I'm guessing that he like went through a bad divorce too, and he like blames everything on like
well, he does mention
he
at one
blames
point.
everything bad that happens to him on his like shortcomings in football, and he
Yeah,
blames the coach, and not necessarily that we find out that he's just not a very good athlete.
yeah, and there's one point where he is talking to Kip, and he says that like his wife or girlfriend or whatever had like dumped him, or he said I think he dumped her or something, but like it was like implied that like she left him because
Yeah,
I guess he's stuck in the past,
yeah, and he's always scheming to like sell some like stupid product, some like crappy
Yeah,
product or something, like like he's got Kip like slinging they're slinging like the plastic Tupperware that like
yeah,
is very cheaply made and like isn't really that good, and it just does. And like he tries to make the other person rip it apart, which yes, human hands can't really break it. But then
right.
like Kip tries to like run it over with the car and it explodes
It just
immediately.
explodes, and he's like, "Darn it!" and he just drives away.
Yeah. There's quirks that there's quirks to it where I can understand why someone would find it funny, and there are some parts where I popped, but for the most part I still just don't understand how this thing became such a big success. Like, and I mean, like, this was a huge success.
It was a hit.
It
Like
was shot for 400 grand, right? This was a very low budget movie. John Heater was actually paid $1,000 to star in the film.
yeah,
And like, he obviously negotiated to get more money after it became a hit,
yeah,
but it was like it debuted at the Sundance Film Festival, and then it like exploded, and apparently a lot of the situations are like loosely based on the life of the director Jared Hess, but the movie, this little $400,000 movie, I'd say little $400,000 movie, like I have that kind of dough laying in the bank. In fact, maybe I do.
Well, I mean, to be fair, $400,000 is very little amount of money for
when it comes to a
be
movie,
made.
yes.
Yeah,
When it comes to a normal person, that would be very nice.
yeah,
But the movie ends up making like worldwide 46 million like 46.1 million. That's crazy. That's like
yes.
that's like a several thousand times over return.
And I think that
And MTV, it was like they had partnered up with MTV Films and Paramount for it, but it got acquired by Fox Searchlight. But I think MTV, like that was the thing that was the logo on there, like that I had to do a double take. I was like, wait a minute, what does the MTV have to do with this?
yeah.
So I guess maybe that helped push it, and I'm sure the promotion helped push it. But I mean, I remember the commercials for it loosely. That it was just the scene at the end when he's dancing, and that was it. And I think that was after it was #1 in the country, because I don't think there was any real initial promotion, except for maybe on like MTV.
It's funny that like it's became like a cultural icon almost, the dancing thing, because even like they included it as like a dance for the male blood elves in World of Warcraft.
Wait,
do the
what?
Napoleon Dynamite dance. Yes, they do the Napoleon Dynamite dance. So
funny.
it's like, which I mean, all the dances in World of Warcraft are kind of like based on like cultural things. Like the undead males do like the typical like metalhead like mosh dance and like like headbang and stuff. And I think the male orcs do like the MC Hammer dance, like the crab dance and all that.
Oh, that's funny. I don't play Warcraft, and I've always wanted to, and I've never gotten into it because I'm afraid that I'm gonna
Yes.
lose my all
No.
of my
Yeah. You're.
social life and all of my life and dedicate it solely to like Blizzard Entertainment. And
You
I
will absolutely.
because everybody
That's
that I
it.
know that has done that, that has played Warcraft, has always they disappear.
Yes.
They get addicted and they
You will.
disappear. I used to be in a one of the bands that I used to be in. We had this one dude who was in the band named Alex, and every and like we would do the rehearsals at the guitar player Mark's house. So like there was no overhead. So like if we went to a studio, then everybody would be timely and everything and like do what they had to do and get it out of the way. But if we were at Mark's house, there would be some weeks where like Alex just wouldn't show, or
Oh my
like and
god.
and we would just be like, okay, so do we want to give him another like 20 minutes, or like do you want to call him? And then and then a little bit later we'd see Mark come into the house, and he'd be in kind of a puff, and he'd just be like, all right, let's just run through this set. Is Alex coming? No, he's playing friggin' Warcraft.
Oh my god.
And then like on
It's
the last, and like there would be some days where like Alex would like let us know, and he would say, "Guys, I have a raid next Sunday at like in the middle of the day. I can't I can't come to practice."
it's crazy. Like it's become so many celebrities play. I mean, like you have obviously Corpse Grinder,
Yeah,
famous for playing, but like
yeah, he's the singer from
Henry
Cannibal
Cable.
Corpse. For those who don't know, really,
Yeah,
Henry Cavill plays.
Henry Cable actually almost missed his audition for Superman because he was raiding with his guild of World
Wait,
of Warcraft.
what?
Yes.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So
You
it's
could you
really
imagine how pissed off his agent would have been if he was like, I couldn't. I'm sorry, dude. What the frick happened? It's Superman. Yeah,
yeah.
I sorry. I had a raid. You understand. You know how quick his agent would have dropped him for that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Jesus, Jesus, that guy dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
I mean, he became faster than a speeding bullet. One would say.
Yeah.
But holy crap, that's bad.
It's pretty hilarious. Um
Ooh, it sounds like he needs better help, but we don't have any sponsors yet, so I'm not plugging their product. If you think we need better help, which you know we do, feel free to tell the folks at BetterHelp that there's a great new podcast called Why Does This Exist? And please kindly send them our way so that way we can have some sponsors who can also help us pay the bills. Not just
Yeah.
you by going to our Patreon and donating. That would be at patreon.com/Why Does This Exist? We appreciate it. But back to Napoleon Dynamite. I'm getting good at this.
yeah.
But yeah, Napoleon Dynamite. It was rated number 14 on Bravo's 100 funniest movies. I'm just reading the Wikipedia here. I don't care, or I don't know, and I also didn't know that. But the movie is like it's taken on a life of its own. I remember I didn't know what it was for the longest time. I think I didn't see it until like 2012 or something
wow.
like that. I didn't see it for a long time,
Yeah.
and I just remember I was like watching it. I think my old next door neighbor Fred showed it to me. Because like he watched it, he thought it was funny, and I was like, "This is like." I went over to his house to watch it, and I was like, "This is stupid." And he was like, "Isn't it funny?" And like I didn't understand it. I like the only
Yeah.
thing that I liked was the dance scene because it was just goofy, but otherwise I didn't see the point in it. And like, but I remember going into Hot Topic and seeing the Vote for Pedro shirts, and I thought Vote for Pedro was like a pop punk band, which it sounds like a pop punk band.
It probably was a pop punk band at some point. I'm sure.
I'm sure somebody tried it, like a pop punk band or like a ska band or something. I'm sure they tried to be both. I'm sure they tried to use the name Vote for Pedro.
Yeah.
But like, there's like, I having watched it again. Like I ended up watching it yesterday. I don't dislike it as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I popped for a couple of things, and I could understand why people find it funny, but like I still don't see why it's why it made all this money or why it's become such a big hit.
Yeah, I think it was like one of those things where I don't even think the director like thought it was gonna like blow up like it did. I think he figured, oh, okay, I'll probably get some notoriety from like Sundance and some independent film festivals and get maybe like a limited run in theaters, and then like it became like this like huge box office smash like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I guess it was just the right time for it. It was
I mean,
post 9/11.
it won a bunch of awards too, but yes, post 9/11.
Like people, it was like a weird time for comedy. Like people were like kind of like, what, where do we go? Like 9/11 kind of like fundamentally changed our culture a lot. And like I think we were still kind of like in it was only a few years later, we're still kind of reeling. We don't know what like direction the culture's in. Plus it's the turn of a new century, the turn of a new decade. Things always change. Like right in the middle of the decade is when we start getting into like the aesthetic of that decade. So that was like really when the 2000s started to become more like the primary, cultural kind of like influence was like right there in the middle of the 2000s. And I guess, like I said, it was our generation's Clerks almost. It was the perfect time because like millennials were all in high school, so we like could relate to the characters because we're all in high school basically,
Mm-hmm. All with
and
our
we're
individual ragtag
the
groups
older
of boys.
millennials were in their younger 20s, and the youngest millennials were like just starting to get into like high school and maybe in middle school still.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like more relatable to our generation, and it was just millennials are technically one of the larger generations, so it just worked because we were like a huge generation, and it appealed to us. I think it really, you had to see it when it came out to like really appreciate it for what it was. What you're watching it years later, I think it's harder to kind of appreciate the humor because again, that was like the early 2000s, like so I could see why watching it in 2012 you didn't like it because it's like the humor was, you don't relate to the humor as much because it was you're 8 years or whatever out of high school, or however many years out of high school at that point, so it's like, well, it's kind of silly.
Yeah, it's that could be why. I mean, also, I don't know if myself at the time would have even liked it because everything that I watched
Mm-hmm.
or that I listened to, it was all like I was into a lot of stuff that was a lot older than I was. So like, and
Mm-hmm.
anything that was current at the time, a lot of it I just did not like in general.
Yeah,
So, like I
so then
think
that could be a
in
lot of it too
2000,
then.
like in 2004, 2005, like I was trying to watch every Monty Python thing that ever came out.
Yeah.
I only like I was very close minded. I only listened to like 80s thrash metal and 90s death metal. I wouldn't give
Mm-hmm.
anything else a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I like I hated everything that wasn't metal specifically because it wasn't metal. Here I am now,
Yeah.
years later, and I love gangster rap just as much as I love metal, but I also love smooth jazz and I also love blues.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, I don't mind putting on some bluegrass or
Mm-hmm.
and I have a guilty pleasure for pop every once in a while too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like everything is just kind of I'm a very different person now than I was then.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I can understand it a little bit better now. But at the time,
Yeah.
and even when I first watched it, I really like that mindset just wasn't really there. I wasn't as open, and I didn't really understand why people would like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, I think you kind of had to like be there, quote unquote. Like you really had to like. It was more kind of like in the moment, kind of like when you saw it when it first came out. It was like, okay, like, and then now going back, obviously, like I watch it for like nostalgic purposes, obviously, because it was like I liked it back when I first saw it when I was 14. So I'll watch it again and still laugh at it today because I liked it then.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
when I watched it yesterday, Like at first, I still thought that it was pretty stupid for about the
Mm-hmm.
first. I would say about the first act. I really like. I thought about just changing the channel or like not or like just watching it, like tomorrow and just kind of delaying it, just like putting on something else.
Mm-hmm.
But like as I got further into the second act, it started to grow on me a little more, and I started to really like understand why people tend to like it.
Yeah.
So I will say that the movie itself, it does slowly grow on you. It does slowly grow on you as you're introduced to more characters. It's like, to me, I think the length is just what kind of like doesn't do it for me. I think it just drags at times,
Mm-hmm.
just because there's so much nothing that happens.
Yeah.
Like, and
Well, it's very
it's
much
not the
like
dialogue that drives it. It's there's not really anything specifically driving it, or like anything
yeah.
specifically except for, I know the dance happens at the end. So am I watching it for the dance, or like what am I like? I'm not sure what I'm watching it for. I'm like
Yeah.
I actually liked watching Kip's transformation. How he's like kind of a pushover,
Yeah.
and then like at the end he ends up leaving and like changing
Mm-hmm.
his image and everything, with his girlfriend LaFonda,
Yeah.
and he he moves to Detroit with her.
Mm-hmm.
So like he ends like his arc is huge.
I mean, Napoleon does really have a big change too because
He
he kind
does
of becomes
too.
more confident.
He does. He does, and he ends up like having friends, which I don't know if he. It doesn't seem like he really has any friends at the beginning of the movie,
No, not
and
really.
then towards the end, he has two friends, one of whom is possibly a future love interest or not love,
Mm-hmm.
or like a good friend. Uncle Rico just is. It kind of just he ends up kind of declining a little bit. Like, you kind of root for him, and you kind of root for Uncle Rico, and you kind of want him to like get his head out of the sand. But
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't seem like any of his ideas work. Like he like
No.
because like at the beginning it seemed like for the for the Tupperware, he throws in the plastic sailboat,
Yeah.
and we never see him do that ever again. And
No.
like the customer ends up wanting to buy the Tupperware because he wants the sailboat.
Right.
But when he's introducing it to other people, he doesn't have a sailboat with him. So was that his sailboat that he just like gave to the guy, or
That probably was. He
it
just
probably
like
was.
just selling stuff out of his own van, his own collection.
Yeah, he probably just wanted it, and that's probably whatever's left. So he probably said, "I need to make a sale. I need to make money, so I'm doing this. So I'll just
Mm-hmm.
throw in the sailboat, even though this sailboat probably cost him, way more than whatever he just made on it. But
Mm-hmm.
he needed to make money so that he could like either prove it to himself or prove it to Napoleon or whoever that he could
I
actually
think.
like do it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I think he wanted to try to win back his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and she does end up returning to him after he like gets beat up by Rex. And he's kind of like
is that his
dejected, and
girlfriend or ex-wife?
yeah, I think that's supposed to be his wife or his girlfriend or whatever.
Oh, I thought it
And
was just like some girl who like comes down the road and she sees what he's doing and she's curious.
no, I think that was actually supposed to be his wife, like returning. Like maybe she heard that he got like beat up and like was kind of like, living now. Like he kind of got a little taste of like humble pie a little bit, and was like just he couldn't throw anymore. Like that was his throwing arm, so he couldn't really throw footballs anymore.
Hmm.
And then she kind of like goes back. I guess feels bad for him, wants to like go back to him. So
Okay. Well, I mean, he has the shift when Napoleon puts on the fake time machine thing that he buys from wherever he bought it
yeah,
from. Like he buys this like contraption that like fries his brain and like his nuts or something. And he calls it a time machine. Kip's like, "Oh, it's a time machine," and like like Napoleon Dynamite tries on, and like you see that it's set to 1982, which is the year of whatever football game that he's talking about that supposedly ruined his life.
Yeah.
And he puts the thing on and like it electrocutes him basically.
Yeah.
And he makes him turn it off and he like throws it and like Napoleon's like, it doesn't work. Nothing happened. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And then like you see Uncle Rico in the back and he's like, yeah, I know it doesn't work.
Yeah, I could have told you that.
Yeah. So, but like he made the purchase, so it's almost that. It's almost like that's like his awakening, kind of, but not really. I don't like, or at least he starts to like, maybe that's where he like starts to come to grips with things.
Well, I think also when
he still tries to throw the football on the camera, but it seems like he's just doing it to get it out.
I think when Napoleon too, like Napoleon throws the tomatoes at his van when he pisses off like the one girl that Napoleon's like hanging out with. I forget her name now.
Deb.
Yeah, Deb. He like tries to sell her the friggin' like the breast enhancing.
Oh my god! Yeah, I forgot
drugs,
that's
right?
his
And then
other thing.
She gets all mad.
Boss thing.
And then he kind of like tackles Napoleon and is like, you're gonna clean my van, like he's like kind of like trying to like be like this like big tough guy, and then Napoleon just like kind of like elbows him and runs away.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of like really showed that like he was like washed up, like he can't even chase down his nephew who's like a teenager, like.
Yeah. And Grandma, we don't really know if she has an arc. Grandma does crazy things. She goes to the hospital for him, and she probably went right back to doing it the next day because she's a tough old lady.
Yeah.
Deb is interesting because she's a little unsure of herself, but she's like she has a lot of skills and she's really smart.
Yeah.
Like she might be a little goofy and a little awkward, but she's like a really smart cookie.
Mm-hmm. And then Pedro, of course, Pedro
is pretty awesome.
A great arc where he kind of comes in as like this exchange. Well, I guess he's not an exchange student.
He's like the new kid.
He's the new kid, and he's in a predominantly white town because it's friggin' rural Idaho, and he's like from Mexico. So, and he kind of like comes out of his shell and ends up becoming the class president, which is pretty, the new kid who's doesn't really know anybody at the school just because, Napoleon like really helped him, and really got out there. And
Deb helps too because she gives them
she gives them
the beads to just give to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and his cousin with the lowrider when they're like. The one bully is like beating up the kid and trying to steal his bike.
His cousin with the lowrider, he was like one of the dudes he was like one of the Mexican twins on Breaking Bad,
oh really?
Yeah, and like those guys, you do not want to mess with them. I forgot what they call them in there, but they're like they're like something like they're the something bad is going to happen to you brothers, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like whenever they show up, they just murder people. But
one of my favorite scenes is when he the kid's getting his bike stolen by. Well, first he's like getting beat up in the hallway. So like Napoleon kind of goes up to him and is like, Pedro will offer you his protection or whatever. And then like the bully comes back and tries to steal the kid's bike, and like they just drive up in the lowrider and pull up, and the Pedro's cousin just shakes his head, and the guy like just runs away.
Yeah, I pop for that, and and the lowrider says "Vote for Pedro" on it too.
Yeah.
I also like when he shows up to to the girl that he asks out to the dance. Mm-hmm. In the lowrider with the cousins, and it's the first time that we even see the cousins, and like we don't even know if they're really related to him or anything. He just like makes that assumption because they're the only other Mexican guys. Yeah, and you're just like, oh no, this poor boy is gonna die. Yeah. He's gonna end up in a ditch somewhere, and it turns out that they actually are his cousins.
Yeah, and the dad is like, "What's that on my driveway?" It's my ride. They do the hydraulics.
Yeah, I pop for that too. like I said, there's things where there's instances where I saw why it could be funny and like
Mm-hmm.
why people would love this movie, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's just not it's not anything I would really go out of my way for other than something like this.
Yeah.
This actually came from it stemmed from a 9 minute long short called Palooka, actually, that was
Yes.
done in 2002.
And if you subscribe to our Patreon, you can see our reactions to it as we do our watch
There
along.
you go. If you want to watch the watch along with us, head on over to patreon.com/why does this exist and donate a little bit of coin, and we will give you a lot of bit of entertainment. You can watch that as well as many other watch alongs that we have. Well, not many other. We have about four up there. We have about four up there now. We will have five ish when Palooka ends up coming up. And that doesn't just mean watch alongs to shows or movies or shorts or things like that. We also have a little bit of excess banter that we chose not to put on the podcast last week.
Mm-hmm.
It was really just like testing stuff that we thought was funny and we threw up there. It's not offensive. It's not anything like that. Oh, this is not safe for TV, so we got to put it behind our Patreon and give it to the people who really love us. It's just something funny that we thought was actually like pretty golden, so we just threw it up as extra content for you wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
But this was made on
yeah.
Paducah.
Palooka.
Paducah is a part of Kentucky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a band that used to be on this forum that we used to be on called Thrash Unlimited, which I miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their name was Executioner. I don't remember, but they were from Paducah, Kentucky, and it was like a guitar. It was like a guitar player, a bass player, and like a drummer. I can't remember if they had a second guitar player, but the guitar player and the bass player they ended up actually like being in a relationship for a little while. Guy and a girl, just for anyone who's curious. So wouldn't you know who won the pony? But Palooka, yes, Palooka was it was interesting, and like the movie takes direct things out of Palooka and just kind of expands on them a little bit. Like the opening scene of Palooka is when he gets on the bus and he just like dangles the action figure out the window and it just kind of like dances as it gets dragged by the bus, which is kind of weird but funny in its own way.
And shot for shot remade in Napoleon Dynamite.
Pretty much.
I think almost identical.
I think the only difference is that there's more kids on the bus.
Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite, it's a full bus, and in Palooka, it's just two kids, I think, sitting at the back that kind of talk to him. And I think in Palooka, John Heater plays, instead of Napoleon Dynamite, his name is Seth, but he's basically the same exact character.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not Napoleon. He's actually called Seth, I believe. But again, it's almost the same exact character. Like, some of the lines are slightly different, but a lot of you could very much see that Palooka was made into Napoleon Dynamite. Like, Napoleon Dynamite is just a longer version of that movie.
Right, and there is no Deb in that, but there are two Spanish kids in it, and like they both end up like one of them is named Pedro, and I forget what the other guy's name is, but they both have like have instances that happen to Pedro in the movie, like getting too hot and then shaving his head, and they have to get a wig for him.
Yeah.
That that happens to like the other Spanish kid, but Pedro just explains everything to him, and both of those characters kind of became an amalgam for the Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite. But there's only like a handful of differences in there. The plot is just basically they need to help this other kid. So they go to like a grocery store and and Napoleon tries to buy a scratch off, or Seth tries to buy a scratch off, but the guy behind the counter clearly sees that he's not old enough, so he like turns him down because they don't have money. That's why they're buying the lotto ticket. and then the kid who they need to help, because he's the only one and he's the only kid who has a mustache. He goes in and he buys the lotto ticket, no problem, and then they end up getting like, $10 or $30 or whatever it is. They go down to the store, they and they end up buying a wig, and I think one of the kids says Palooka, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Actually, what is Palooka? Does Palooka mean anything?
I don't know. Palooka meeting right there.
Okay.
Wig.
Oh.
Look.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's okay. Now I know.
No, there you go. And knowing is half the battle.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Our good friends G.I. Joe. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they'll be our friends. In these uncertain times, who knows what side G.I. Joe is really on? Oh, God. And also, what has G.I. Joe been tweeting? I have a feeling there's things that G.I. Joe once said that are no longer kosher in today's world.
Probably.
But I actually liked Palooka. I thought that it was good. I think like time wise that like it did all that it needed to do, and it was good. But I like that it's the interesting thing, which I mean I guess this just happens in just independent films or shorts or something, that they're in black and white. This was also shot in black and white, and this makes a lot of sense to what you said before about Napoleon Dynamite essentially being the Clerks of its generation.
Yeah.
Like, there's clearly an influence
especially
Palooka.
in Palooka.
In Palooka,
yeah,
the influence
really
is very obvious.
There's like a one shot when they're standing outside the convenience store or gas station, whatever it is, and it's like this wide angle shot, and they're all standing up against the wall, and it's like very clearly like this is Jay and Silent Bob standing in front of the convenience store in Clerks, almost exact same kind of like shot and framing, So I think, and the store that they go into, the gas station, very much looks like the Quick Stop in Clerks. Like it looks almost identical. Like it's just that kind of like early 2000s, 90s kind of convenience store with the cigarette thing like right above like the counter and stuff like that. And it's just they're clearly influenced by Clerks. I would say it's got to be intentional too. I don't think they did that by mistake. I'm pretty sure it was, they were going for that.
Mm. And I think they succeeded, and obviously it ended up getting picked up to do a full movie, and they did a bunch of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But the success ended up leading to an animated movie, not an animated movie, an animated show too.
Right. Which again, mirroring Clerks.
Yes. But I think for the show, I saw a couple of names in there. I watched it this morning, actually, just one episode. There's only one season. I think there's like 8 episodes or something like that. I thought the show was actually decent, and I saw a lot of familiar names. I'm not sure if they had gotten all of the cast to reprise their roles, but they got most of them actually to do the voices, which I thought was cool. And a nice touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, it wasn't a bad show. I like the show and Palooka better than the movie itself, simply because I think they do enough of what they need to do within the time frames, and there's no fat there, or there's not as much fat. I think the concept of the cartoon episode that I watched is a little silly. Yeah, but it's a cartoon.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you look at Clerks, the animated series, is the same thing. It was very much silly situations that happen that, like, wouldn't work in a live-action film like Clerks, so they kind of, like, took it and made it sillier because it was a cartoon, so it works for the cartoon. So, it's like a similar situation there,
Yeah. But not a bad cartoon. The animation was actually pretty good, and they got them pretty close. I'm I don't know who did it, but you can watch it on Hulu actually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm trying to find the animated series here. Oh, okay. Okay, it was done in association with 20th Century Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. There's only 6 episodes, but I thought I saw 8. All right, maybe I'm wrong. Sue me. Don't sue me. I have no money. But yeah, the director Jared Hess and his co-screenwriter wife Jerusha. I didn't know that Jerusha was a real name. I thought that I love the show Superstore, and like Jerusha is the wife of Glenn, the store manager at the beginning, who kind of like talks himself out of his job at one point, and he ends up just being a regular like assistant manager or an employee.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Jerusha was a made up name that they used on the show.
I guess it must be.
I guess it's a real name in like Middle America. Who knew? But yeah, they got most of the original actors. What, Napoleon Dynamite the game, Napoleon Dynamite Festival? What is this? Are there other things that happen because of this?
I guess so.
Oh, Jesus Christ! There was a video
How could there
game.
have possibly
How
been
could there's a PSP video game for this?
There are 30 mini games, while the DS version has 25 mini games. Huh.
What do you do? Do you just?
There's no. It looks like Wikipedia has really no description of what the game is. It just looks like.
I mean, the less the better.
I mean, see, this is something. A video game based on Napoleon Dynamite is something I would expect from like the early '90s when they were making video games based on anything. Like they had like, what was it? They had a Wayne's World video game. It's like, how do you make an action platformer based on Wayne's World? Well, and it was terrible. So there you go.
Or E.T., which is this got a 7 actually.
It was good. DS. Wow.
Yeah, not terrible, honestly. Let me see. Like, they really nailed the license, although the presentation is a bit bland. The minigames are generally well done and capture the spirit of the film perfectly. This isn't the best minigame collection on the DS, but it's better than most. Diehard fans of the film will probably enjoy this, and gamers looking for some enjoyable, bite-sized gaming might be surprised by what they find here. This is a 2007 article on IGN by Chris Adams. I don't know who he is, but we're giving you credit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I guess this game wasn't that bad, but it's kind of weird. All right. In the town of Preston, Idaho, which
is where it takes place.
Which is where it takes place, and I guess filmed. Well, or they have a Napoleon Dynamite Day there, or like the Napoleon Dynamite Festival. They held it for several years, and they have like themes to the game, like a tetherball tournament or a tater tot eating contest or something like that.
Moon boot dance impersonation lookalike contest for bus.
It's kind of like a blob fest. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's something to do in Idaho, which
now what else is there to do in Idaho?
I mean, I was going to say, now it gives me one more thing, like just one more thing out of 0 things that I now know exist in Idaho. So if I'm ever going to go to Preston, Idaho,
well, I know they have potatoes. I mean,
I guess
it's Idaho. They have potatoes. Yeah. You know, that's the only thing that I know about in Idaho.
It looks like they got most people on the like, if not the full cast from the movie, which is good. It helps.
Yeah.
But it is, it was only going to run for as many episodes as it did. One season, I think, was plenty. It wasn't bad.
I think it came out a little too late in the game. Like, it came out 8 years after the movie.
Yeah, that's the thing with some of these things. When you're trying to do a sequel thing, or like, you need to really like capitalize while the iron's hot, because otherwise, if it fades away, it doesn't make any sense to do it